The Great Bombshell. Don't you use one of those shells on me. I'm not taking no orders. Must give fish to underdeveloped penguins. Cut that out! Hello everybody, Sparkster1701 here. And we're finally looking at a toy that I have been wanting to review for a long time now. I finally managed to find one at a local store, so I didn't have to pay all the markups that many of these legacy guys go for anymore. This is Bombshell. Bombshell is, of course, one of the Insecticons from the Generation 1 era, and he's basically the last of the three major Insecticons. For those of you that collected the toys back in the 1980s, or are collecting Generation 1 versions today, you may be aware of that there were four other Insecticons: Barrage, Chop Shop, Ransack, and Venom, that were labeled as Deluxe Insecticons. They never got any promotion in the cartoon or the comic book at the time when they originally was released, due to the fact that they were made by Takara's competitor, Bandai. Hasbro bought up the molds since they wanted to make sure there was plenty of Transformer toys on the shelves. Takara got word of them buying molds from their competition and imposed on them that, yeah, you can use those in your toy line, but you can't sell them back here to us in Japan because they're not made by us, and you can't put them in your cartoon or your comic books. So many of them were, while interesting characters in their own right from their tech spec bios, they got overlooked. Whereas the other three Insecticons, like Bombshell and his buddies Kickback and Shrapnel, made frequent appearances in the cartoon and comics. Bombshell had a strange ability that through his stinger here up atop of his head, he could implant special mind control shells called Cerebro shells into organics like humans, or even into other Transformers. Once he had that implanted inside, he basically had full control over what they could do. This would have made Bombshell quite a scary character, but unfortunately Bombshell tended to more enjoy playing with his victims rather than utilize his ability to its fullest extent. So unfortunately that makes Bombshell kind of an underrated villain. Now, of course, like with the other Insecticons that we've shown off here in the previous year, we do have his Generation 1 counterpart from 1985. So you can kind of see how the two are very similar to each other. Of course, there is some changes, like the fact that they went with a lighter shade of purple on his chest. And the head is done up a little bit more to resemble how he appeared in the cartoon. But I am glad that they also did retain the yellow door on his chest. This one doesn't open, unfortunately. For those of you who may be wondering about that, the original Insecticon toys, when Takara released them in the 70s and early 80s, before they got sold to Hasbro, were designed to be powered mecha. So that's why when you open that up, it looked like there was a seat inside. I mean, Bombshell here really doesn't have a seat in there, but Shrapnel did have a seat. But that was basically a cavity to put a little guy inside to be the driver. So, just a little bit of interesting history for you. At any rate, let's take a look here at Bombshell's accessories. And we will start here with his gun. Of course, the gun has a couple of extra pieces. We're going to remove those. I'll show them to you in a second. But I want you to see what the gun looks like. Because the gun here does take inspiration from the Generation 1 version. Granted, it is smaller than the Generation 1 version. But as you can see, the design at the end of the barrel does take its design cue from the Generation 1 original. Again, they've shortened it for whatever reason, but it is nice to see that it does pay a nice throwback to its origins. Then, of course, next up we have these two extra cannons. They are both the same, so we only really need to take a good close look at one of them here. These extra cannons, as you saw, they came off of the sides of the gun. So it's kind of to make up a little bit for it not having these two prongs sticking out further. So I guess when you hold it from the side, it more resembles the original gun. And of course, while it's not listed as an accessory, I do want to point out that the stinger here at the top of his head, it can pop off, because mine did when I got it out of the package. So do be careful about that, especially if you look for one loose. Now, at any rate here, let's take a look at his articulation, and he had about the same that you would expect from a deluxe class figure. His head can turn from side to side. Unfortunately, with the way it's set up, it's not on a ball joint, so it won't rock up and down. You can raise his arms up about so far. And his arms do swing at the shoulder all the way around. You can bend his arm at the elbow a little greater than 90 degrees. And he has a swivel at the bicep, so he has G.I. Joe battle grip. He can twist at the hips, so he has some dance moves going. You can spread his legs apart into a full splits. Man, that looks painful. You can raise his leg up at the hip around 90 degrees, and you can bend his leg at the knee 90 degrees. So all in all, pretty standard articulation. Alright, before we transform Bombshell, I want to do something else to show off to all of you, so you can see a nice bonus thing here. I want you to see how the toys were displayed at the store. This is, of course, the Legacy Evolution box. And thanks to the way my collection has gone for Generation 1, we do happen to have the box for Bombshell. So as you can see, even though the Generation 1 version was a relatively small toy, he was in a lot wider of a box. A little bit excessive on the packaging there. But of course, in the 80s, we were always excessive. But as you can also see, we also got a little bit better bang for our buck, because Bombshell back in the 80s only cost about $6. Whereas modern Bombshell, if you can find one at the store, runs about $20 to $25. And as you can see in the top of the box, we had basic transformation instructions and a nice big Transformers logo, which of course, when you compare it to the modern logo, the modern one really falls flat compared to the 1980s one, you know? It just doesn't really scream out anything, whereas this held science fiction potential. And of course, since Bombshell was a Decepticon, it proudly showed he was one, including having the box in purple. I mean, I don't mind them going with a uniform color for the boxes for the series. It does mean when the years transition over, you can kind of tell what year the toy was released. So that part I don't mind. And of course, on the bottom and on the sides, you got to look at how Bombshell looked as a toy in both modes. And we kind of get the same thing here on the back of the box. So, not really an issue with that. But of course, on the back, we also had the yearly mural, which showed off many of the prominent toys. And we sort of get that here on the side of the new box. You just need another one with the other side. And you kind of get an idea of some of the toys that will be released in that line. But of course, we also had this tech spec file that told us a little bit about the character, especially if we had parents that didn't let us watch television or read comic books. I don't know if there's that many parents that still do that to this day, but there were some back in the day that really questioned the quality of children's television. But of course, when you're talking a TV show of giant robot aliens shooting each other, not really much for plot development. Alright, enough of that. Bring Bombshell back out here, because we are going to get ready to transform him. We start by taking his hands and we fold them into his forearms. We're going to straighten his arms out a bit, because then we're going to turn him around and his arms will fold backward here at the shoulder. It is a bit of a stiff joint. Alright, once we've done that, then you'll turn his arms at the elbow so these holes on his forearms are facing upwards like that. Then we will come around here to his head, bring this upper portion down. It's supposed to connect into a hole here on his chest. Mine doesn't do it very well, but it's at least in position. And then we fold the stinger out, like so. Then we come down here and we rotate his legs at the hip. May have to shift the arms out a bit to ensure there's enough room. Just go back and fold them back down when you're done. Once we've done that, we come around here to the back, and you're going to open up these panels here on his legs. Once we've done that, you can fold his feet down. And then we will bend his legs, both at the ankle and knee, to fold them up against his body. And remember, you gotta get them both to move at about the same time. Does take a little practice. Once you get them both folded up, you can press them together and then lock them down against his body. Then, of course, we come back down here to his underside where his arms are. You'll notice here on his arms there are a couple of protrusions right here, and they should line up with these vertical holes here on his legs. That's how you'll secure his arms down. Unfortunately, you don't get a whole lot of room to work with that. But at any rate, once you get them down like so, you get these two black pieces, and you can connect them into these holes that are on that were on his robot arms. and they will help form his insect legs. And then there you have it. Bombshell is in his insect mode, which is purportedly a stag beetle. And of course, you can take his gun and you can attach it to one of the holes here at the back. That way he can also shoot at his victims instead of just stinging them. And of course, for comparison's sake, here is the Generation 1 version right next to him. As you can see, it does retain many of the design elements of the original. Although the original one, since, like we said, he was based on a powered mecha, he has little wee wheels. And I had some people talking about Starscream's wee wheels on his landing gear, and it's kind of... these things are a lot smaller. But I don't dare roll him around too much on them due to the fact that those arms are pretty fragile. I've gotten pretty fragile over the years on many of the old Bombshell toys. So I guess that's one thing that's nice that they didn't add onto the modern one. At any rate, we get down now to my thoughts. What do I think of Bombshell? I'm glad that the Insecticons got a remake after all these years. Because many of the other remakes of them that have been done in the intervening years since Generation 1 have been less than impressive. So, it's been nice to see them get a good-sized modern remake. Bombshells here certainly does look pretty good. If there's one detail I'm not too thrilled with, I don't really like how the one piece here on top of his head connects to the body. It doesn't really do it very well on my sample, so not real thrilled with that, but all in all, in general, I do like how Bombshell came out. Now, if only they just hadn't disappeared from the shelves so quickly. At any rate, that's my review of the Legacy Evolution version of Bombshell. I hope you all enjoyed it. Please do remember that if you love the content we feature on this channel, I would appreciate a like, a share, and a comment, and ask that you do subscribe if you haven't done so already. Next week, we're going to shift to the new Legacy United figures, and we'll likely cover a bunch of them into the following month. So, this is Sparkster1701 saying I will catch you all later.